Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome to another exciting reading of Bhagavatam Bites. You have no idea, if you ever knew. One day we'll share all the outtakes or the takeouts of right before we go on live to be with all of you to read the Bhagavatam. So today we are reading from the Bhagavatam at home because it is still freezing cold outside. And where are we reading from?
Canto 4, chapter 23, text 18.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. See, because on the third one you have to go up and stuff, right?
Text 18. Prithu Maharaj then offered the total designation of the living entity unto the Supreme Controller of illusory energy. Being released from all the designations by which the living entity became entrapped, he became free by knowledge and renunciation and by the spiritual force of his devotional service. In this way, being situated in his original constitutional position of Krishna consciousness, he gave up this body as a Prabhu or controller of the senses. Purport. As stated in the Vedas, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the source of material energy. Consequently, he is sometimes called Maya, or the Supreme Person, who can create his pastimes through his potency known as the material energy. The Jiva, or have we not read?
Yes. I marked here. We read the first paragraph, so we start with the second paragraph.
Oh dear. Sorry everybody.
It's okay. You put in the comments below if you picked up on the fact that we did
We
that.
all did.
Okay.
So we're still in text 18, but this is the second paragraph of the purport. When Prithu Maharaj became spiritually powerful by the enhancement of his spiritual knowledge, jnana, and renunciation of material desires, he became a Prabhu or master of his senses, sometimes called Goswami or Swami. This means that he was no longer controlled by the influence of material energy. When one is strong enough to give up the influence of material energy, he is called Prabhu. In this verse, the word Swarupa star is also very significant. The real identity of the individual soul lies in understanding or attaining the knowledge that he is eternally a servant of Krishna. This understanding is called Swarupopalabdhi. By culturing devotional service, the devotee gradually comes to understand his actual relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This understanding of one's pure spiritual position is called Swarupopalabdhi. And when one attains that stage, he can understand how he is related with the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a servant or friend, or as a parent or conjugal lover. This stage of understanding is called Swarupa star. Prithu Maharaj realized this Swarup completely, and it will be clear in the later verses that he personally left this world or this body by riding on a chariot sent by Vaikuntha.
Sent from Vaikuntha.
I think what stood out for me is this word Prabhu. Because it's so why it keeps moving that camera? Because it's so abused, I feel, in the movement, as we often joke about. Oh yeah, Prabhu do this, Prabhu take out the rubbish, Prabhu go over there or be quiet, whatever. It's like, but actually it's such a high respectful term, and it refers to someone on such a focused or it's not just, oh, Prabhu, because you're my senior. You know, it's referring to someone who's actually in control of their mind and senses and has reached a certain level of advancement. And so it's interesting how, abused that term is, actually.
Meaning, I mean, it's not like the term itself, I guess, gets abused, like we beat it.
I don't think anyone thinks that, actually.
But you mean it's kind of misused, right? Misused?
Abused,
Like someone used,
yeah.
because the word Prabhu means what? It means master. It's like saying to the master, if you're a servant or a slave, and you say to the master, "Hey Prabhu, what's your problem?" Right? What's up?
That's what I just said.
Okay. In this verse, the word Prabhu is also significant. As stated before, when one is completely self-realized and acts according to that position, he can be called Prabhu. The spiritual master is addressed as Prabhupada because he is completely self-realized soul. The word pada means position, and Prabhupada indicates that he is given the position of Prabhu, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for he acts on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unless one is a Prabhu, or controller of the senses, he cannot act as spiritual master, who is authorized by the Supreme Prabhu, or Lord Krishna. In his verse praising the spiritual master, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti writes, Sakshad Daritwena Samassa Shastraya, Uktos Tata Bhavyata Eva Sadbi. Spiritual master is honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord. Thus, Prithu Maharaj can also be called Prabhupada, or as described herein, Prabhu. Another question may be raised in this connection. Since Prithu Maharaj was a powerful incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shaktivesh Avatar, why did he have to execute the regulative principles in order to become a Prabhu? Because he appeared on this earth as an ideal king, and because it is the duty of the king to instruct the citizens in the execution of devotional service, he followed all the regulative principles of devotional service in order to teach others. Similarly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, although Krishna himself, taught us how to approach Krishna as a devotee. It is said, Apani Achari Bhakti Sikainu Sabare. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed others in the process of devotional service by setting the example himself through his own personal actions. Similarly, Prithu Maharaj, although a Shaktivesh avatar incarnation, still behaved exactly as a devotee in order to achieve the position of Prabhu. Furthermore, Swarup Sta means complete liberation. It is said in Bhagavatam 2.10.6, Hit Vanyata Rupam Swarupena Vyavastitaha. When a living entity abandons the activities of Maya and attains the position from which he can execute devotional service, his state is called Swarup Sta, or complete liberation. Wow. So there's a lot in there, and a lot to do around this word Prabhu, but also around the word Prabhupada. And we've heard the word Prabhupada means the master at whose feet many masters sit. So I've heard that explanation, and I always thought pada came from feet, like lotus feet of Prabhu, of the master. Here, Prabhupada is saying that Prabhupada is completely self-realized soul. The word pada means position, and Prabhupada indicates he is given the position of Prabhu, And that Prabhu is a reference to also the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because Prabhu also can be a way to refer to God. You can also refer to God as Prabhu. You can refer to God as Swami. Sometimes Lord Jagannath is called Jagannath Swami. So master means like Pati, or Goswami or Swami or Prabhu. So that's interesting, because we may think this term Prabhupada was specifically designated for our Prabhupada, but his Guru Maharaj was also Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, and also Rupa Goswami was occasionally referred to as Rupa. You might hear sometimes people will say Rupa Goswami Prabhupada. So it is a term of endearment, although there was a lot of upset when Prabhupada began being called Prabhupada, especially by his godbrothers, because that was the term they used for their spiritual master. But Srila Prabhupada's making the point here that even Prithu Maharaj could have been called Prabhupada, because it's that term of endearment. Now it's also interesting because Prabhupada is writing this purport, and by this time he was no longer being called Swamiji, he was actually being called Prabhupada. And, the humility, of course one might say, well, that's very arrogant, he's basically comparing himself to God. But the point is that if he doesn't tell us, who is going to tell us, So, because he's the teacher, so he has to tell. It must have been so difficult for Prabhupada to say, how can I teach these people, knowing at the same time that he is the representative of Krishna, and he's encouraging people to worship him. And it can be easily misconstrued and misunderstood. So it's an important point. I mean, he also mentions that similarly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, great master, he came as a devotee to teach how to worship him, Krishna, like that. So it's a very interesting point. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I think we can read the next one.
All right, text 19. The queen, the wife of Prithu Maharaj, whose name was Archie, followed her husband into the forest. Since she was a queen, her body was very delicate. Although she did not deserve to live in the forest, she voluntarily touched her lotus feet to the ground. Purport. Because Prithu Maharaj's wife was the queen, and also a daughter of a king, she never experienced walking on the ground. For queens used to never come out of the palace. They certainly never went to the forest and tolerated all the difficulties of living in the wilderness. In Vedic civilization, there are hundreds of similar examples of such renunciation on the part of queens and dedication to the husband. The goddess of fortune, Mother Sita, followed her husband Ramchandra when he went to the forest. Lord Ramchandra went to the forest in compliance with the order of his father, Maharaj Dasra, but Mother Sita was not so ordered. Nonetheless, she voluntarily accepted the path of her husband. Similarly, Gandhari, the wife of King Dasara, also followed her husband into the forest. What's this guy into the forest business? Being the wives of great personalities like Prithu, Lord Ramachandra and Dhritarashtra, these were ideal chaste women. Such queens also instructed the general people by showing them how to become a chaste wife and follow the husband in every stage of life. When the husband is king, she sits beside him as the queen, and when he goes to the forest, she also follows, despite having to tolerate all kinds of difficulties in living in the forest. Therefore, it is said here, Atad Aha, that although she did not want to touch her feet to the ground, she nonetheless accepted all difficulties when she went to the forest with her husband. So, what do you think of that?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts, but did you want to share any?
Sometimes you don't have to go to the forest to have difficulties in where you live and that. So sometimes you can feel like that. You're experiencing the difficulties of living in the forest when you're living somewhere else.
Yeah, well, that was one of the points I was going to make, that, of course, in Vedic times, it was actually genuinely you would go to the forest. But even in the forest, there was some structure set up, because a lot of the sages and sadhus lived in the forest. A lot of different people lived in the forest. It wasn't like you just went into the abyss of nothingness in the forest. But your point is great, because, yeah, as people get older, they go into a different stage of life, and it's meant to be one, Grihastha ashram is meant to be one of more. You have to kind of exploit the resources of Krishna's energy just to maintain and stay alive. And that's allowed to some extent. Prabhupada said the Grihastha ashram is a sort of license for sense enjoyment. But then once your children are grown, then the idea is that, okay, now I enter another phase of life. And that phase of life is more of an austerity and a beginning of renunciation of attributes, qualities, or not qualities, attributes and resources, or like things that we've collected over time, where you just recognize that, okay, I'm now like halfway through, I'm on the other side. It's like, it's going to be a downhill roll from here. So, yeah, going into the forest means basically I start to perform more austerities in preparation for basically facing the biggest austerity, which will be giving up this body. That's my thoughts. But in the meantime, it's clear that a woman should follow her man if she's chaste.
Sheep is going to open up.
You heard that right here in the Bhagavatam.
Well, that means the husband has to be qualified and worthy of being followed.
No, it just means you follow.
Right.
Just kidding. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
I mean, if you got a husband on the level of Lord Ram or pray too much, then you follow him happily. Otherwise, quite frankly, why should you follow them?
Anyone has any comments, you can put them down there below. Especially want to hear from the men folk out there. All right, thank you all very much. We'll conclude here before this turns into a really hot topic. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare
Go to
Krishna.
Srimad Bhagavatam. Ki
Right.
Jai.